Okay, so we've been learning the story of David HaMelech, and we struggled with the fact that David was going to be lying together with Avishag, even though he's not married to her. And we mentioned a number of different issues that come up halachically with being married, being with a woman, and not legally being married. I know in today's day and age, it's very popular and even to have relations with people you're not married with, but it's definitely not something that we would think would be allowed, even not to have relations. According to Jewish law, there's a lot of legalities in this. One of the prohibitions is yichud. Another prohibition is touching a person of the opposite sex, which is a prohibition, of a biblical prohibition, according to some opinions. And not only is he touching her, he's doing an act that seems to be an act of a type of love act where he's close, skin to skin touching. I understand he's doing it for medicine purposes, but the act of hug, being so close to each other would seem to be prohibited. So we discussed this at length. We've been dealing with this issue, and I didn't want to just not talk about it. I wanted to make it clear. So we've given a few thoughts about it. I did want to mention that there is an alternative way of understanding this, and it has to do with the fact that David is not well, and certain laws, rabbinic laws, when a person is in a state of medical necessity, there are certain laws that he's exempt from. But generally, biblical laws, there is no exemption unless it's life or death. And possibly this was only a rabbinic law, according to some opinions, even though he's lying with her. And I mentioned there's a problem of nida. She is a single woman who. Well, she is single, but she's a woman who she's young, and she menstruates, and so there's a biblical prohibition of having relations with a woman that didn't go to mikvah. Either she menstruates now, or she did menstruate and she hasn't gone to mikvah yet, and so it would seem to be a problem of getting close. Let me just mute everyone here. I'm sorry, there's some background noise. Okay, so I mentioned that maybe they simply didn't lie together until she went to the mikvah. When she menstruated until she went to the mikvah, maybe they simply didn't lie together. But it's possible that there is an opinion that says that it's only rabbinic, such a prohibition, if they're not lying together in a way of love, but simply in a way of medical, as like a type of medicine, or simply like this is like her warming. This is his warming blanket. So if it's not done in a way of chiba, even in a way of love and charm and connection, but more in just a medical purpose. So there is such a view that would only be prohibited, maybe rabbinically and so on, and therefore possibly they were even allowed to lie together when she menstruated. So that I think we've covered more or less the discussion here.
Rabbi, can I ask you a quick question? Was it because of his age, that's why he was sick?
Well, it does say that in his old age, but we did mention different reasons. That we did mention what caused him to be cold in this type of sickness where he shivered and he wasn't able to be warmed even when they brought him warm blankets. We did talk about that because he cut off the corner of the garment of Saul, or because he saw the angel of death. But basically we've discussed that. It's on previous recordings about what caused him to have this issue. Let me mute everyone here a second. So the next verse tells us that, well, we did already verse 4, and we're verse 5 now. And verse 5 tells us that there was a final rebellion. We thought all was over. I mean, David HaMelech, we thought he went through enough, but he didn't. There's a final issue that comes up now. Again, he's at the end of his life, and you would think that he'll finally have some respite, but not exactly. And verse 5 is going to tell us about that. But first of all, we have Mordechai here. First of all, welcome back, Mordechai. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Did you get my the certificate?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I got the ones for Chagiga and for Rosh Shabbos and that. So.
Good. Okay.
Okay. The thing about Avishag, it says that it says in Masechta Sanhedrin that when Avishag was called to David, she said to him, even though she knew that she was just going to be for one thing, whatever, but she also commented that that he probably at his age couldn't even be intimate with a woman anymore. And Masechta Sanhedrin says that
we
David
brought
said,
that. Wait, you weren't here last week
okay.
when we studied two different places
Okay.
inside about this story.
Okay.
Well, the one that we were using as a source was on page 22 in Sanhedrin, where she wants David to marry him, right? And I think that's what you're quoting. But we talked about that at length as well. So do you have a specific question, or you just wanted to mention that those details that it doesn't say here, right? There's more detail there. Yeah, we talked about that Gemara, and we dealt with that. Okay, so we're in verse 5, and again, as I mentioned, this is about the final rebellion that David is going to deal with. Adoniyahu, and Adoniyahu, the son of Chagis, exalted himself, saying, I shall reign. He provided himself with chariot and riders and 50 men to run before him. So here, Adoniyahu, who's the son of David HaMelech, he's the son of David's wife Chagit, he wants to reign. All his days, his father had never saddened him by saying, why have you done this? Moreover, he was very handsome, and his mother bore him after Avshalom. Now, what do these points mean? So it mentions a number of points here. Number one, it mentions that his father never saddened him. Now, David HaMelech had many children, and why would he not have rebuked Adoniyahu, and the other children he rebuked? Why would that be? Sounds very strange. Or did he not rebuke any of his children? And obviously, we know, children do not just grow up as angels. The trick of having good children is not something that's easy, and it's not something that is automatic. And there's no simple way to bring up children that works. There's no set mold that you can use. And every child is different. Every parent is different. All family dynamics are different. But the simple concept of rebuking a child is pretty obvious, that children need to at some point be rebuked, and this child had a mother, had a father. Why was he never rebuked? And the verse is explaining to us that the fact that he was never rebuked caused him to make this rebellion. Now, I understand he's not exactly rebelling against his father, because his father is basically going to die soon. And Adoniyahu really is more rebelling against Shloimeh HaMelech, King Solomon, because it seems that the automatic assumption is that King Solomon is going to get is going to be the next king, and Adoniyahu really wants that wants the kingdom, and he has some claim to it. I mean, you have to understand, Solomon is only 12 years old, and there is going to be a gap of, with regard to Solomon's age and King David's age when he reigned, and gap of maturity, maybe you'll say, and the fact is experience. And Adoniyahu is really next in order. Who were David's children? Who were David's oldest children? So it mentions that Adoniyahu was born after Avshalom. So he was pretty high up there in the ranks of age of David's children. Now, David had 3 children that were older than Adoniyahu. One of them we see here is Avshalom, because Adoniyahu was born after Avshalom. So Avshalom is one of the older ones. Now we know Avshalom was killed. Yoav, if you remember, Yoav is the one who killed Avshalom, and that was David's son who made a major rebellion. Avshalom was a real character, and he made a rebellion. He had the entire Jewish people just about, except the tribe of Judah. He had them on his side. Major rebellion, or at least a major part of the Jewish people. I shouldn't say the entire Jewish people, a major part of the entire of the Jewish people with Avshalom, and so Avshalom was killed. Now, above, in addition to Avshalom, we know Amnon. Amnon was an older child, and Amnon fell in love with Tamar, who was the sister of Avshalom. Tamar was the daughter of Macha, and Avshalom the son of Macha. They were a brother and sister. Macha was an Eshes Yefas Toyar. She was the woman who David fell in love with at war, and David was allowed to marry her. And Amnon fell in love with the daughter. Amnon was another son of David, and he fell in love with this with Tamar, and he raped her. And ultimately, Avshalom, who was Tamar's brother, he ended up taking revenge. He waited some time, and then ultimately he took revenge and killed Amnon. So we've got Amnon dead, we've got Avshalom dead, and now the only other son of David HaMelech is Kilov. Kilov is a person who never sinned. He was very righteous, a big scholar and Torah scholar. And the understanding is either he had died already or he was not interested in being king. So Adoniyahu is really next in line. Shloimeh HaMelech is only 12 years old. He's much younger. So even though that might be the assumption is that Shloimeh HaMelech is next, is Shloimeh HaMelech is going to be the king, and because David had told that to Bathsheba, and that was the understanding. But the fact is, he is 12 years old, and therefore Adoniyahu is taking advantage of the moment where Shloimeh HaMelech is not king yet. David HaMelech is already what you call Oiver Ubatel. He's not exactly Oiver Ubatel. He's not, but he's pretty sick. He's got this shivering issue. It's very cold, and it says the term that the verse used, Zakein Babayomim. He was old, and he is about to pass away. And hindsight, we know that he passed away shortly thereafter. So here is Adoniyahu taking advantage, and the reason he's taking advantage, why does he have such arrogance? Why does he have such chutzpah to go? He knows this is not exactly right, but he's willing to do this. Where did he get this from? It's because his father never rebuked him. In the Hebrew, it's loy atzavay aviv miyamav. The father never made him feel sad, never saddened him in his days. And the commentaries understand that to mean he didn't rebuke him. But it does seem surprising that a father like David HaMelech would not realize he should rebuke his son. So there is an interesting Gemara. The Talmud says in Tractate Makos, it mentions there's something very surprising that for many years I couldn't understand what it meant. Until I saw one of the commentaries puts these two stories together, and finally gave me a little understanding. The Talmud over there in Tractate Makos says that even though a child is good, you still should rebuke him. Now, what does that mean? Even though a child is good, you're supposed to rebuke him? So for a long time, I couldn't understand it, and then I saw
Rabbi
on a sefer they connected these two stories. Yes, Susan.
A child needs to be rebuked, needs to know that the parent really loves them, and that's one way a child knows that when they're disciplined. Discipline shows love.
So that's very nice, but and that's a good point, and that's pretty much what we're going to say here. But the point that's surprising is that David, the point that when they're good, you have to rebuke them. Then rebuke them when they're bad. In other words, when they do something wrong, that's when you rebuke them. Why would you need to rebuke them when they're good? So I understand, rebuke might show some type of love or you care about them and so on. But so the thing is that the Gemara is talking about a case like Adoniyahu. Adoniyahu was always a perfect student. He always got A's. He always had respect. At least he acted that way, never did anything wrong. So his father never had an opportunity and never felt the need to rebuke him. In other words, all children, and I don't think there's any exceptions, this is very rare, that you would have someone like Adoniyahu. Well, maybe, I guess you have here and there, maybe there are some children that are just perfect. But it's very rare. I mean, not people I know, but you could have such a thing. Adoniyahu, see that child, that he was that perfect child, that his mother put him to sleep. He went to sleep. He didn't fetch. She took him to the store. He didn't say, I want this, I want that, I want the other thing, and he didn't pull the stuff from the table down and throw it on the floor. He didn't throw his food. He didn't spill. He never bit his mother when he was nursing. He never did, all the other, things that the children do. He never did. So his father never rebuked him. So the thing is, the Gemara says that even if a child is good, you rebuke him. It means even if he's always good, even when a child never does anything wrong, you must rebuke them, because otherwise they're going to have a certain arrogance that's going to cause them to. They're going to have arrogance. It's going to cause them to sin and rebel and not have proper, or not know how to handle authority, not know how to handle. They might not know how to handle rebuke if someone does rebuke them years later when they get older. There's certain resilience, maybe they might get benefit from it. But all these, important qualities that a person needs to have to live a good life, they're not going to have if they never were rebuked. And that was the mistake that David HaMelech made, that he didn't rebuke Adoniyahu because Adoniyahu always acted good. So he never rebuked him.
Rabbi, I wanted to make one other comment. When you rebuke a child, they start to develop humility also.
Right. Accepting authority, humility. Yeah.
Right.
Good point. Yes, Ben.
I want to say that sometimes, which I did a couple times, if they don't do what they're supposed to do, like nothing big, but that's when you explain to them, that there's things they can and things they cannot do, but things that they can, they should, if they are good things,
So what you're really asking, Ben, is, so how do you rebuke a child when he does good things?
It's not a real rebuke, but
and you're saying
that inaction is wrong too.
Right, inaction. So you're trying to answer that question, and right, that's what you're explaining. That how do you rebuke him? by saying like either he does something that's not perfect, that's not as good as he should have done it,
Right.
or he didn't inaction, he didn't do something that he could have done, or
Not at the right time or whatever
subpar,
it is.
right, subpar, push something off. So all of these things are ways of figuring out. It's not an easy thing. Again, educating children is something that is not. There's no answer really. I mean, and you can never blame yourself because certain people have better mazel than others.
There's outside influences too, so you can't really blame yourself too much.
Right. But you got to try.
Yeah.
Got to try. And, one of those things the Gemara tells us is you have to rebuke a child. So here we have Adoniyo, who is starting this rebellion, and there are different commentaries that deal with what did Adoniyahu really expect. And one of the commentaries has a very interesting conspiracy theory, and that is that Adoniyahu is taking advantage of the sin that King David did with Sheva. And what he'd really like to do is blow that up, make that sin popular knowledge or something that's on the forefront of people's minds. And if he did that, it will make King Solomon less of a candidate to be the next king, because King Solomon is the son of Bathsheba. Now, King David, officially sinned with Bathsheba. We know it wasn't the sin that people make it out to be, but it was considered to some on his level, it was considered a sin. King David sinned with Bathsheba. Now, people have pretty much forgotten about that. You have to understand, King David had been fasting for years, atoning for that sin. He'd been begging Hashem for forgiveness. And not only that, he's controlled himself since. And in fact, some commentaries even say that him lying with Avishag and not having relations with her was some type of a atonement for proving that he's able to have self-control, because he's going to lie with her and not have relations with her. So it's sort of like a additional atonement that he's controlling himself. He's not only controlling his actions, he's controlling his thoughts even, because in Jewish law, we're not even allowed to have thoughts of impure thoughts, things that are, sexual thoughts and so on. So he's controlling his thoughts and his actions, and he's lying with her. And so he's really reached a level of atonement, tremendous level of atonement, that the Talmud, to the extent that Talmud says he's the epitome of Baal Tshuva, of someone who does repentance. So Adoniyo takes advantage of the fact that David HaMelech is now going to be lying with Avishag. Now here is his opportunity, that he encourages these officers of the king that they should get a very beautiful girl. So until now, we spoke about why did he want to have a beautiful girl. We mentioned other commentaries that, well, why did they want a beautiful girl to lie with David HaMelech? They knew they needed a virgin, but who said she needed to be beautiful? They needed a virgin for some reason. Medically, a virgin holds in certain warmth because she's closed, so to speak, and it somehow contains the warmth. I don't know medically how that works, but that's how at least in King David's day, maybe the doctors felt that way, or maybe whether it's correct or not, that's what they advised King David. So he needed a virgin, but he didn't necessarily need a beautiful one. So I explained, well, they wanted a beautiful one because it's an honor for the king. You give king the best. You don't. That's what's appropriate for the king. They wanted to bring the king the most beautiful. I also mentioned maybe there's a concept of tshuva, of atonement, having a beautiful one, and yet he's controlling himself. So that would be another maybe understanding of why specifically it would have been appropriate for him to have someone who was beautiful. But here we have a conspiracy theory of why they got so. because Adoniyahu told the officers, you have to get someone beautiful for my father. And the reason he wanted that is because he knew that his father will end up sinning with her. And if his father sins with her, it'll show that he never repented from his sin with Bathsheba. And then ultimately, Adoniyahu will say, Bathsheba, King David sinned with. King Solomon is not holy like you think, because he's the consequence of a relationship that was inappropriate. And therefore, I'm the one who's fit to be king. So that's one way of understanding where Adoniyahu is coming in, and that's where they got this idea to even have this beautiful girl, the Naira Yafa, which was not part of the medical necessity. It was really addition. It was really something that seems to be additional to what the doctors had said. It would have, and possibly it came from Adoniyahu. So there is such a theory that I saw brought down in one of the commentaries. Yes, Ben.
I wanted to say, if he's sleeping with a Betula and he's not having relations with her, he will have proof later that he didn't sleep with her. If he gets somebody that did sleep with somebody before, he will not have proof that he didn't sleep with her.
That is true. That is true. But not necessarily was that why the doctors said it. The doctors said it.
I don't know. Maybe they talked about it before.
But they said the warmth. But your point fits with Adoniyahu's conspiracy, because according to your point, Adoniyahu will be able to prove that he's right. In other words, your point is a valid point, because that would fit with what Adoniyahu is trying to prove from this story. So we've basically covered this idea of why Adoniyahu, where he's coming from, and what his goal is. He wants to be king. Not necessarily does he want to take over from his father. In other words, he doesn't necessarily want to put his father away at this point, but he really is. His main goal is to take over instead of Shloimeh HaMelech, instead of King Solomon. So that's where we're going to stop. And Rabbi Wernick is here. Zai gesund, everyone.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.